You know that feeling when you are, like, scanning the morning news, or maybe you're just navigating a particularly brutal stretch of management changes at your company?
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows that feeling.
Right. Or even just reading a book on ancient Roman history, and it just hits you. It feels like we're constantly wading through this never-ending swamp of corruption, greed, and just completely broken institutions.
Yeah, it really does feel constant.
But, I mean, the natural human reflex is to point the finger straight at the leaders.
Yeah.
You look at the people at the top and you think, well, if only we had better, smarter, more ethical people in charge, all of this would be fixed.
Exactly. That specific frustration just haunts every single generation. Without fail, we're constantly looking for the villain. We point at political parties, we point at multinational corporations, rival nations, and eventually the frustration just boiled over and we end up pointing at one another.
You really do.
And the underlying assumption there is always that the problem is the character of the specific people holding the power.
Right. And breaking down that exact assumption is the entire mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at a truly fascinating source text today. It's an excerpt titled, "Why Blaming Leaders Never Solves the Problem."
It is such a good read.
It really is. It revolves around this philosophical and scientific dialogue between two thinkers, Maya and Nick. And our goal for you today, listening to this, is to explore why swapping out the people in power never actually fixes the underlying rot.
Because it never does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
We're going to map out the invisible, biological, and structural forces that actually dictate how leaders behave. I mean, for me, digging through these sources, it was one of those rare paradigm shifts that just completely rewires how you view politics, business, and honestly, just human nature in general.
It really reframes everything.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to talk about fixing the future, we have to look at why history is essentially, a broken record playing the same tragic song on repeat.
Yeah, history does offer this incredibly tragic, cyclical pattern if you just zoom out far enough. I mean, over thousands of years, empires have risen and collapsed. We've seen monarchs replaced by presidents.
Right.
We have watched dictatorships crumble into republics, and then republics backslide right into autocracies.
It's wild.
It is. We have completely rewritten constitutions, drafted entirely new legal codes, drawn new borders, and invented these incredibly sophisticated political slogans.
But the exact same human problems just keep reappearing at the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what the flag looks like or what the Constitution says, you inevitably get corruption.
Every time.
You get the abuse of power, this vicious tribalism, resource hoarding, and conflict. The faces on the currency keep changing, but the systemic problems remain entirely static.
Which is so telling.
Right. Which tells us the answer to fixing this isn't going to be found in a history book or some political science class. It's actually located inside our skulls.
Yes. To really grasp why that broken record keeps skipping, you have to look at the architecture of the human brain. Okay, the fundamental issue operating behind the scenes here is an evolutionary mismatch. I mean, the human brain simply did not evolve to run modern, interconnected civilizations.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. It didn't evolve to manage multinational corporations or govern millions of strangers. It evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in these small, tight-knit nomadic groups.
Like hunter-gatherer societies.
Exactly. And in that environment, your survival meant finding food immediately, avoiding immediate physical danger, fiercely protecting your in-group, and competing against outsiders for very limited resources.
Right, so it's purely about day-to-day survival.
Pure survival. And those ancient, deeply embedded survival mechanisms didn't just evaporate because we suddenly invented the internet or stock markets or skyscrapers.
Of course not.
They are still the primary operating system running inside every single modern institution today.
So we are talking about literal neurobiology dictating the terms inside a corporate boardroom or a parliament floor.
Absolutely.
It's the same hardware trying to run software it was never designed for.
That is a great way to put it. The brain is constantly evaluating the environment for reward and risk, for status and belonging, for safety and uncertainty. And these aren't just abstract psychological concepts,
Right.
They are hardwired biological realities driven by neurochemistry, like the dopamine system, which drives our reward circuitry. It responds directly to environmental incentives.
So it's basically training us.
Exactly. If a specific behavior secures your status or brings you resources, dopamine reinforces that neural pathway to ensure you repeat it. And simultaneously, you have the amygdala constantly scanning the horizon for threats.
The fight or flight center.
Right. In our ancient past, that threat was like a literal predator. Today, it might be a threat to your social status, a drop in your company's stock price, or a political rival.
But the brain reacts the same way.
Yes. When the amygdala senses that modern threat, it triggers the exact same biological cascade. Cortisol levels spike. The body prepares for a fight-or-flight survival scenario.
And this leads to the part of the source text that really forced me to just stop and reread the page. Because when that cortisol floods the system, like when a leader feels stressed or threatened or insecure in their position, the prefrontal cortex,
Which is so important.
yeah, the part of the brain responsible for long-term strategic thinking, ethical reasoning, and impulse control, that is the very first thing to shut down.
It just goes offline.
The brain literally reallocates energy away from ethics and long-term planning, and it shifts it entirely toward immediate survival.
Think about it. You put a leader in a high-stakes, hyper-competitive environment where showing vulnerability or making a long-term sacrifice means losing power today.
Which is basically every political or corporate environment.
Right. Their amygdala is constantly firing, their cortisol baseline is permanently elevated. Under those conditions, the prefrontal cortex is essentially operating on a skeleton crew. Biologically, they are no longer capable of prioritizing a 10-year societal consequence over a short-term survival tactic. The mechanism of the brain literally prevents it because it thinks a predator is in the room.
Wait, I have to jump in here and push back on this because that sounds incredibly bleak.
I know, it really does.
Like, are you saying we are biologically doomed? If our brains are just wired for ancient selfish survival, doesn't that just prove humans are inherently bad leaders? Because if the biology dictates the failure, there's absolutely no point in trying to build better societies.
That reaction makes total sense, and honestly, it's usually the first conclusion people jump to. But the source text argues the exact opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it isn't doom, it is adaptation. The crucial thing to understand about the human brain is that it is a highly sophisticated adaptation machine.
Okay, so it adjusts.
Right. It doesn't have a fixed moral setting. It evaluates the specific environment it is placed in to figure out the optimal strategy to survive and thrive.
So it's looking for the rules of the game.
Exactly. If you take a human being and place them into a structural system that heavily rewards ruthless short-term gain, say, a corporate structure where quarterly profits are the literal only metric for keeping your job, their brain adapts.
Right.
It chases the short-term gain because the environment demands it. But, and this is the key, if you place that exact same human into a system that transparently rewards honesty, long-term stability, and accountability, their dopamine system adapts to chase those incentives instead.
Okay, so the brain is just playing the game based on the rules of the board it is currently sitting on.
Precisely.
So if the brain is just an adaptation machine, then the environment itself, like the political or corporate system we place these leaders into, is the actual puppet master pulling the neurobiological strings.
The environment is everything. This actually aligns perfectly with the blank slate theory that's discussed in the dialogue between Maya and Nick.
Right, the blank slate.
Yeah. No infant enters the world scheming for political dominance. No child is born with an instinct for corporate embezzlement.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. These behaviors are learned adaptations. They're meticulously shaped by the incentive structures and social expectations that surround us from the absolute moment we enter an institution.
And the source points to actual empirical data to back this up. This isn't just Maya and Nick theorizing in some toffee shop.
No, it's hard science.
Yeah, when we look at things like the Milgram obedience studies or the Stanford prison experiment, we're seeing this biological adaptation play out in real time. We are seeing what happens when you take perfectly normal, healthy people and drop them into a toxic structural environment.
Those studies are incredibly revealing when you look at them through this neurobiological lens.
They really are.
Like in the Stanford experiment, researchers built a simulated prison and assigned ordinary students to be either guards or prisoners. The structure of that environment immediately created this hyper-tribal in-group, out-group dynamic.
Just instantly divided them.
Instantly, it flooded the amygdala with territorial threat signals. The environment handed the quote-unquote guards unchecked authority and zero accountability.
And we know how that ended.
Yeah, within days, normal college students were subjecting their peers to psychological torture.
It's terrifying.
And then in the Milgram study, the environment used an authority figure in a lab coat to systematically lower the cognitive load on the participants' prefrontal cortex.
How did it do that?
Well, the system basically told them, you are not responsible for the consequences, I am.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by shifting that structural accountability, the system gave normal people permission to administer what they fully believed were lethal electric shocks to a stranger.
The mechanics of it are just terrifying because the environment completely overrode their individual moral compasses.
Completely.
Normal people committed atrocities not because they possessed some inherent cartoonish evil, but because the structure of the situation manipulated their biology. It made them prioritize obedience and tribal survival over empathy. And it's not just isolated psychological experiments. The source points out that modern economics demonstrates the exact same behavioral manipulation. I mean, incentives drive decisions. You change the incentive structure, you literally rewire the behavior.
That's exactly it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you think about this through the lens of agriculture, right?
Okay, agriculture, I like it.
Yeah, so expecting an ethical person to remain ethical inside a deeply corrupt, poorly designed system is basically like planting a perfectly healthy, vibrant seed in a patch of heavily poisoned soil.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. And when the plant inevitably wilts and turns brown, our current society looks at the dead plant and says, oh, what a terrible seed. Let's dig it up, find a better seed, and plant it in the exact same spot.
And then we act shocked when it dies again.
Exactly. We act so shocked when the new seed dies, too. We are obsessed with the quality of the seed and completely blind to the toxicity of the soil.
Wow.
If a political or economic system rewards cutthroat short-term survival, the human brain will adapt to survive the soil, no matter how quote-unquote good the person was when they walked in the door.
What's fascinating here is how drastically this systemic scientific view completely upends centuries of established human philosophy.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, for the vast majority of human history, religion and traditional moral frameworks have categorized corrupt leaders as suffering from a profound moral failing.
Like it's a character flaw.
Right. The narrative has always been that leaders become tyrants because humans are inherently sinful, or because that specific individual possessed a flawed soul.
Yeah.
We have spent millennia trying to pray away, preach away, or legislate away bad behavior. But structurally and scientifically, corruption isn't a sin.
It's an adaptation.
It is a highly predictable, mathematically inevitable outcome of a system that actively rewards it.
That actually reframes the entire timeline of human civilization. Like, we have been trying to solve a biological incentive problem with moral outrage.
Yeah.
Corruption isn't a moral failing. It's literally just the brain successfully completing the maze that the environment designed for it.
Exactly. When a system dictates that hoarding immense power and aggressively stockpiling resources is the only reliable way to ensure your own safety and elevate your status, the brain will hoard power and resources.
Because it have to.
Evolution demands it. Failing to do so in that specific environment would be biologically maladaptive.
So because civilization has largely misunderstood this biological reality, our attempts to fix our broken societies have been aimed at the completely wrong target. Like, we have been obsessing over the wrong variables for thousands of years.
Oh, 100%. We invest enormous, almost incomprehensible amounts of time, energy, and capital into choosing who leads.
Oh, the elections alone.
We spend billions of dollars on election cycles. We spend millions of hours on corporate leadership seminars, executive coaching, board appointments.
Right, the vetting process is endless.
We dissect the personal character of candidates under a microscope. Yet we invest virtually zero energy into actually auditing and redesigning the systems themselves to ensure they structurally encourage honesty, enforce accountability, and reward long-term thinking.
The source text frames this beautifully. It's like, we are living in this magnificent house, but it was built on a constantly shifting foundation of mud.
Right.
And every few years, deep cracks start to spiderweb across the living room walls. But instead of bringing in engineers to examine the shifting earth and rebuild the foundation, we just go to the hardware store, buy a fresh bucket of paint, and cover up the cracks.
Just paint right over it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Swapping out the leader is literally just applying fresh paint. We throw a massive party to celebrate the new color. We tell ourselves the house is finally fixed, but you give it a few years, and the foundation shifts again.
And the cracks come right back.
They always return, because the underlying structure was never addressed.
The dialogue actually follows that up with another brilliant metaphor to drive the point home.
Oh, the ship one.
Yes. Changing the faces in power without fundamentally altering the structure of power itself is like rotating the captains on a sinking ship while completely ignoring the gaping hole in the hull.
It's so true.
You can put the most highly trained, deeply ethical, brilliantly strategic captain at the wheel, you can give them the best compass in the world, but the ship is still going to the bottom of the ocean if no one patches the hole.
Now, I want to pause here and make something explicitly clear for you listening, because it is vital to how we process this source text.
Very true.
The analysis here is highly careful to remain completely impartial regarding specific forms of government. So this isn't some veiled argument pushing for democracy, nor is it an argument justifying authoritarian rule or technocracy.
Right, it doesn't take sides.
Exactly. The text impartially notes that history demonstrates clear strengths and devastating weaknesses across a wide spectrum of governmental forms.
Because the neurobiology and the historical data, they just do not care about political ideology.
Not at all.
What the science demonstrates is that none of these governmental systems, whether it is a sprawling representative democracy, a strict monarchy, or a centralized republic, none of them will consistently produce positive outcomes if their underlying architecture ignores how human beings actually think, learn, and respond to incentives.
Right.
I mean, a poorly designed democracy that mathematically incentivizes short-term outrage and extreme polarization to win elections, that will inevitably produce disastrous leadership.
We've certainly seen that.
And similarly, an authoritarian regime that incentivizes paranoia, sycophancy, and information hoarding will also produce disastrous leadership.
So the label doesn't matter.
The ideological label on the tin doesn't matter at all. The invisible structure of the incentives inside the tin is what dictates the outcome.
So what does this all mean? Like, if repainting the walls is a delusion and rotating a captain is just a distraction, how do we actually fix the foundation? How do we patch the hole in the hull before the ship goes under?
Fixing the foundation requires a deeply uncomfortable paradigm shift. We have to completely abandon our historical obsession with finding the quote-unquote perfect leader.
The savior.
Yes, we have to let go of the fantasy that there is a savior out there who is somehow magically immune to human biology, who can wade into a toxic system and just remain untainted. Once we abandon that fantasy, we can start asking an entirely new question.
Right. The text refers to this as the infallible question. We have to stop asking who deserves to hold power or who is morally pure enough to lead us, and start asking what kind of structural system would make the act of leadership itself less dangerous to the rest of us.
Exactly. What environmental systems make it easier for ordinary, flawed people to lead well? That is the operational shift.
It changes everything.
The solution proposed in this dialogue is a radical pivot toward a genuinely scientific understanding of ourselves. We have to leverage the fact that the exact same ancient brain that ruthlessly hoards resources and abuses power is the exact same brain that is capable of incredible resource sharing, profound trust building, and massive global cooperation.
It's the same hardware?
Same hardware.
Oh.
But it will only execute those positive behaviors when the structural environment makes cooperation and transparency biologically rewarding instead of biologically threatening.
It all routes right back to the dopamine and the cortisol.
Always.
If a system is designed so that cooperating with rivals and planning for the next decade lowers cortisol and triggers a dopamine reward, the human brain will eagerly cooperate.
It will chase that reward.
But if the system is designed so that hoarding power and crushing rivals lowers cortisol and triggers dopamine, we will hoard and crush. We literally have to design institutions that trigger the neurobiology of cooperation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to realize that redesigning civilization isn't a task we can just outsource to politicians.
Definitely not.
In fact, relying exclusively on politicians, who are currently succeeding inside the broken systems, by the way, to fix those same systems is a fundamental flaw in our old model.
They have no incentive to change the soil.
None at all. Designing better incentive structures requires a massive, coordinated, multidisciplinary effort. We need neuroscientists to explain precisely how the brain processes long-term risk versus short-term reward.
Right.
We need behavioral psychologists to map out social dynamics and tribalism.
We need teachers, we need economists mapping market incentives, structural engineers, sociologists, parents, and we need citizens like you who are listening right now. Everyone has to be actively involved in auditing and understanding how environments shape human behavior.
Absolutely. History is not stuck on a loop because humanity suffers from a lack of intelligent or well-meaning people. It is stuck on a loop because we stubbornly continue to try and solve yesterday's problems, relying on yesterday's flawed assumptions. We keep scouring the earth for a pure, incorruptible individual to hold immense power instead of doing the hard architectural work of designing systems that make immense power less corrosive for whoever happens to hold it.
The cage of bad leadership was never actually locked. The lock was just the story we told ourselves. That single line from the text is such a profound takeaway.
It really is.
We told ourselves this comforting fiction. We told ourselves that bad leaders are just inherently bad apples, and if we just search hard enough to find the good apples, everything will be fine.
Just fairy tale.
Yeah. But the reality is the invisible forces of our ancient biology interacting with the modern environments we place people in, those are the real forces pulling the strings.
So the next time you find yourself frustrated, reading the news and pointing a finger at a leader who has catastrophically failed or a system that feels hopelessly corrupt, I want you to just pause.
Yeah, take a breath.
Stop focusing on the individual's character for just a moment and ask yourself to look deeper. What are the invisible forces at play? What are the structural incentives and environmental pressures that actively shaped or even demanded that person's behavior?
It completely shatters and rebuilds how you view the world. And as we wrap up today, we want to leave you with a brand new lingering thought to ponder on your own. Something that scales everything we've just discussed right down to your own front door.
I love this part.
If massive systems and environments subconsciously shape the behavior of global leaders, politicians, and CEOs, how are the microsystems in your own everyday life secretly incentivizing the very behaviors you dislike in the people around you?
Oh, that's a great question.
Think about it. What are the unwritten rules of your company's Slack channel? What are the structural dynamics at your family dinner table? What behaviors are the algorithms on your personal social media feeds actively rewarding with dopamine hits?
It's all connected.
It really is. Are these everyday environments structurally rewarding outrage, short-term thinking, and selfishness? Take a hard look at your own life and ask yourself, are you just constantly repainting the walls instead of checking the foundation?